This is The Simpsons Hit and Run. With The Simpsons celebrating its 35th anniversary at the end of last year, you should have all seen this one coming. Let's find out. Is The Simpsons Hit and Run actually worth playing in 2025?
We begin flying into the famous Simpsons logo before having a look at the Simpsons house from the perspective of the Spy Cam Wasp drone, before getting fucking annihilated by Homer, leading us into our main menu. We have a few sound options, but not much more to speak of in this main menu, aside from a multiplayer mode which we've yet to unlock. More on that later. Homer gets a craving for Buzz Cola after seeing an ad for it on TV, and on the way out of the house we fall into the first true loading screen of the game. And already, this game is trying to make an impression.
Each loading screen throughout the levels will have different newspaper articles describing various scenes, often presented in humorous or interesting ways. Local man ruins hot dog eating contest. Disqualified for vomiting. Low-level employee harasses millionaire. Hounds released. Along with a smattering of others. Each one is either self-referential in the events of the game, or simply trying to evoke a laugh. Like, Bone Storm 2 out today. Record truancy rate expected, and I can really appreciate little details like this. They could have simply left the loading screen at a scene of Itchy torturing Scratchy, as it already has in the loading bar, but the little extra details like this in moments where nothing is intended to be happening gameplay-wise is a good example of the care that the developers wanted to put into the game.
Marge tells us that somebody's eaten all the dessert in the house, so tasks us with going to get more from the Quickie Mart. Works for us, we were already on our way there. Something I noticed immediately is that the world itself still looks fantastic, outside of a few assets like the hedges. I can't quite place why, but for me they sort of look like they've been glued into the world afterwards. The same problem doesn't follow for the trees. They look like part of the world. The hedges though, there's just something off about them that make them look like an afterthought placed into the world later than everything else.
Anyway, we're here now, so let's just park up. Perfect. Grab the cola and ice cream, and here's two mechanics explained to us rather nicely. The triangle button can help us to interact with people and the world around us for mission objectives, but also to run gags, a collectible event in the world that will either play just simple funny animations or reference specific episodes, like Apu's silent alarm.
Yo, empty the register, dude. Okay, you are the boss. Silent alarm activated! Oh, that's it!
Ice cream and cola in hand, we leave and find the other use for the triangle button, pressing buttons and switches, which will often help us to either raise platforms, lower them, or do any one of another 100 things depending on the situation.
Another aspect of the game we'll see is that some characters look mostly okay rendered in this style, but some have really made a transformation, and certainly not for the better. Marge looks beyond dead behind the eyes, and some of the other characters really have become nightmare fuel. Oddly enough, Mr. Burns looks fantastic, exactly as I imagined him to look, to be honest. Anyway, finally getting back to the Simpsons house, and before we've even sat down, Marge sends us back out to take Lisa's science project to her on our way to work since she's forgotten it, because that totally couldn't have been done the first time we left. So, race Skinner to the school, almost wipe out a child and deliver the project. Job done. It's not too hard to beat Skinner to the school, but not too easy either. It was actually a good level of difficulty.
Oh, and we find out from Lisa that Marge wants to speak to us at home. Again. Seriously? What is it with Marge and these piece-by-piece conversations? Give it to me all at once so I don't have to make 6 trips. Literally. We left home, went to the store, went home, went back out to the school, went back home again, and now Marge is telling us about Flanders needing something so we have to go and see him as well. The sheer amount of back and forth Marge makes us do on this level is frankly stupid, and it's a miracle we aren't somehow already late for work. So, Homer accidentally on purpose borrowed some of Flanders' stuff, and gave it away to others or left it around town, so we have to go and retrieve it against the clock, taking us on a small tour of the town for our ultimate reward.
Here's your reward. A prayer from the Lord's #1 fan. Our Father in heaven, bless this noble oath.
So what's our next objective? Enter the Simpsons house and talk to Marge. Come on, game. Surely there were more characters from the family or the show that you could have used to give us objectives instead of Marge.
You're late for work.
Oh really, Marge? We're late for work, are we? Oh, I wonder why that is.
Homer decides through some sort of clairvoyance that Lenny is the only person who will know where Smithers is, so we go and ask him, finding out he's at the Quickie Mart, and in our never-ending intelligence decide we should go and buy the Plow King from Barney. So I hope you've been collecting those coins, because it costs 150 of them. Barney rambles off something to the effect of dark gun-armed leprechauns, and we race off to destroy Smithers' car before he can beat us to work, and realise that we're late. Taking out at least one full classroom of children along the away and virtually nuking Smithers. Of course, that's the only reasonable option.
Driving into the power plant, I guess that seems safe, Homer makes his way to his control panel, only to find a camera watching.
How can I sleep with that camera? Oh, sexy girls could be watching me on the internet.
He ultimately decides to do the only reasonable thing and go on a rampage to destroy all of the power couplings, calling on his psychic abilities for knowledge of a nuclear reactor's power grid, clearly. Going through this obstacle course, I'm wondering how the hell Homer has the fitness to be doing this. I'd be half dead after destroying 4 of these power couplings, but regardless, this obstacle course is the first instance of required platforming in the game, and it handles it well enough. Though, you can really tell that this game wasn't built for extended on-foot traversal. Controlling any character on foot is clunky at the best of times, and has a weird sense of gravity. Something about the way they jump just doesn't feel quite right. Couple this with the fact that the camera tries to fight you at every turn, and you have a somewhat annoying platformer experience that I really wouldn't recommend to people.
The obstacle course itself isn't that hard, but it does have some tight timing jumps and a trap or two to catch you off guard. Most players won't struggle with this section since the timer is more than generous. Start a nuclear meltdown and then it's time to go home. Arriving home and taking a well-needed rest on the sofa, Homer puts on the news only to discover that the wasp he destroyed at the start was just one of the swarm. Following this discovery, it is also reported that there are surveillance vans around town, and looking out the window, Homer discovers that there is one right outside his house.
This brings us to a new mission type where you have to follow a vehicle and not lose it. After filling Springfield General Hospital with pedestrians, you race around the town and through the power plant in an attempt to catch the van, only to discover that the van was heading straight for Mr. Burns' mansion. After learning this, Homer decides to go to the supermarket to meet who other than Marge. Again. I mean, seriously, a game that has 34 named and unique characters, and we spend at least 4 of the first level missions speaking almost exclusively to Marge. 5 if you want to count the Flanders fetch quest. Look, I can appreciate her relevance to the story as one of the original Simpsons characters, but we can even see characters from the show who have names but no relevance in this level just walking around. Use them for some of them. Ranting aside, we now have an interesting mission where we have to play as Marge and crash into this video game van to make it drop its boxes of the violent video game Bone Storm 2. Finally, Marge has decided to at least help us with the thing she needs done. Good thing too, because this mission is annoying as hell. The boxes you're trying to knock from the van never spawn in a convenient spot, so you'll be stopping and going back for almost every box no matter how you hit the van. It just seems to be luck. The mission isn't even difficult, just slow because you'll spend half of it reversing for the items you need.
Coming into the final mission of level 1, we are tasked with spying on Mr. Burns. Racing across town to the power plant, we come across Carl and talk to him. This is where I carried out the glitch as seen in our Simpsons Hit and Run short. You'll find that in the top right of your screen now and linked in the description. This concludes level 1, where we learn that in fact Mr. Burns is not the originator of the spying around Springfield, at least according to him. The voice acting will be very familiar to those who watch The Simpsons, as both the series and game share the same actors. Some of these lines are very well thought out, and honestly made me chuckle, like this guy.
A sad day for generic characters everywhere.
Others were very repetitive, such as when Homer crashes. With only a few lines recorded for a crash, you're bound to hear the same ones a million times over.
Speaking about crashing, this will happen non-stop with how bouncy and floaty this game makes the cars feel, which isn't helped by the fact your car wants to stay upright and actively corrects for this at even the smallest tilt, making the driving experience less than amazing in some situations as it just wants to fight you for control. Which might be great for kids, but can hinder you when you're used to driving games and try to correct for it yourself, just for the game to throw you in another direction. So, we've finished up the story missions for level 1, but there are extra objectives, a bonus mission, one for every level, some street races, collector's cards, character clothing, vehicles, wasp cameras, and a selection of in-world gags. Street races will help you unlock vehicles, though as with story missions, the NPC cars act like Formula 1 cars, completely glued to the ground and able to take turns at any speed, which makes them feel a little unfair, but they're definitely not impossible with some decent driving.
A lot of other collectibles go towards 100%, but collector cards will unlock the bonus game, multiplayer. Find all collector cards in a level and you'll unlock a track, which you can either race forwards or in reverse from a top-down perspective. While it's nice that the game has some form of multiplayer, this is a bit of an underwhelming one, especially if you try and find these cards without a guide. The bonus mission in every level will unlock a special vehicle for you, and the bonus mission in level 1 is received from Cletus. This is the only mission in the level that I'd consider to be a challenge, as the timing is quite tight, so this may take a few attempts. You have to collect cardboard tubes from around Springfield, then collect Cletus's tobacco harvest, by which point you'll most likely get a hit and run. This game's version of a wanted level. The addition of the cops chasing you in the mission can make the drive back a bit harder, alongside not trying to crash into other vehicles or trailers trailers. With a bit of good driving though, you can get this mission finished with about 20 seconds to spare. Overall challenging, but not impossible.
Going into level 2, we begin controlling Bart and his new selection of vehicles, and Bart's missions I would say are maybe slightly more challenging than level 1, but not by a huge amount. Overall the gameplay feels the same level to level, just being less forgiving as the game goes on.
Let's quickly take a moment to talk about the music before this video ends however, as we don't want to spoil the rest of the game should you decide to play it. The music is actually pretty great, if not a bit repetitive. The game has quite a few different pieces that play in the overworld and in missions, and aside from the music being in fairly short loops, they're entertaining enough for it really not to be an issue.
So, let's answer the question, shall we? Is The Simpsons Hit and Run worth playing in 2025? In my opinion, yes. The game is a blast. It has that feeling of arcade racing games like Crazy Taxi with its own unique spin on the genre. I will say the graphics have somewhat held up, but the characters definitely haven't, at least generally. Some look okay, but most have this walking corpse vibe that just doesn't sit well with me. Other than that, the game has a few issues with the physics and on-foot traversal, but nothing that would ruin your experience. Overall, this is a solid Simpsons game with references and comedy that any Simpsons fan is bound to love, with more than passable gameplay to go along with it, though comparing it to modern games, it's definitely lacking in some areas. I'd give it a solid 8 out of 10 by modern standards. There are definitely better games out there today, but this still remains a good choice even compared to today's selection. Definitely give it a go. If you're still here right to the end of the video, thanks. I really appreciate it.